Republicans want at least $60 billion in cuts this fiscal year, and a new report from Moody's Analytics predicts that those cuts could shave half a percentage point off GDP this year and would mean 700,000 fewer jobs by 2012. Mark Zandi authored that report. He joins me now live from Dallas. Mark, you're getting a lot of attention for this, particularly on Capitol Hill. Ben Bernanke was asked about your predictions, and he's got a far different estimate. He says he doesn't understand how you got to 700,000. Can you explain?
Yes, let me first say, though, I do think that government spending cuts are absolutely essential. I'm not arguing that they're not, and I think it's also very important for policymakers to lay out a clear path towards those cuts down the road. I'm just arguing that I think when the economy is still struggling, until we're creating enough jobs to bring down unemployment, it would be premature to have those cuts. So I wouldn't start them now. I would wait until 2012, 2013, when the economy is in a better place. And I think the chairman, I've been traveling. I didn't get a chance to listen to his testimony, but I've seen clips. I think the chairman is saying the cuts will have a drag on economic growth.
Yes.
It's just a question to what degree. And that really does depend on the numbers and what you're comparing against. And neither of us have had a chance to talk with each other about this. So, I'm not sure what his analysis is, and I don't think he's had a chance to really take a look at mine.
Do you intend to talk to him about that?
I have no intent at this point in time. I mean, if there is some interest at the Federal Reserve to chat more about this, I'd be very happy to. But okay. I haven't had those conversations, no.
Yeah. Well, that Goldman Sachs forecast of a 2% decrease in GDP by cuts, the $60 billion amount, is really what was the source of disagreement. Bernanke saying it'll just cut several tenths on GDP and it'll cut jobs, just not as many as 700,000. But meantime,
and several tenths of a percent is exactly what I expect, several tenths. So it's a matter of degree, a matter of precisely how much of a drag. But I don't think there's any debate that it will be a drag, and I don't think there's any debate that the recovery is still very fragile. We're still not creating enough jobs to bring down unemployment.
Right, and I think specifically you were looking for 0.5% in 2011, and then a decrease in GDP of 0.2% in 2012, if I remember your forecast correctly.
That's correct, because there is an important point. $60 billion is budget authority. The actual hit to the checks that are cut to consumers, businesses, and to the rest of the government to take time to flow out. The spend out takes a couple, 3 years to work through the economy.
Okay. Well, what about this debate about inflation right now? You see the price of oil, the price of commodities, cost of living going up. Chairman Bernanke says that's temporary and we've got it under control. Are you more worried than he is?
No, I would agree. I do think that, at least so far, with $100 for a barrel of WTI, for gasoline going for $3.25 for a gallon of regular unleaded, I think we can digest it. I think the pass-through from those higher oil prices, energy prices, to the rest of inflation will be very modest. At least that's been our experience over the last 25 years or so. The pass-through is really quite modest. Now, of course, if prices were to rise measurably more, say we got to $125 for a barrel of oil, that would be more of a problem, and I think the risks to the economy, to broader inflation, would be greater.
Right. Well, and you have the Libyan Oil Authority saying it'll go to 130, given what they're doing. But, I mean, at what point do the estimates and the forecasts become self-fulfilling here? If we keep coming back to a lack of confidence as putting a top on growth in some way, are we just having headline risk that is hurting us, even if we haven't seen the translation through to the consumer's pocketbook because of gas and oil?
Well, I think the increase in oil prices over the past 4 or 8 weeks, so say about $10 for a barrel of oil, that's largely fear. I don't think it's fundamental. I mean, there has been some reduction in oil exports from Libya, but it's been quite modest, and there is more than enough to make up for that in Saudi Arabia and the rest of the world. So, in terms of supply and demand fundamentals, I don't think there's any reason for prices to be higher. And if we're seeing the worst of it now in terms of the disruptions, I do think oil prices will settle back down to where they were prior to all this. It'll take some time because people are very nervous, and rightfully so. low. I mean, there is good reasons to be nervous here, but the fundamentals would argue for lower prices, and that's where we're going to head if the unrest begins to abate.
You're an economist. You're apolitical in your forecasting, but your forecasts are getting politicized here, Mark. You forecast a government shutdown would not necessarily be disruptive unless it lasted through the month of April. Are you still standing by that as we listen to these debates about the debt ceiling and budgets?
Well, that's not quite accurate, Margaret. My view is that if the shutdown is a week or so, like we experienced in 95 or 96, I don't think that would be too disruptive. It would probably show up in the data, but it would quickly come out of the data, and at the end of the day, I don't think it would have a big macroeconomic consequence. If it lasted much longer than that, if it was a couple, 3 weeks, or certainly if it lasted through the end of April, I think that would be very serious, because not only because of the dollars and cents involved, but because of the signal that would send. It would suggest that policymakers just can't bridge their differences, and I think investors would grow very nervous, and it would have broader macroeconomic implications. So more than a week or two, I think that would be a serious problem.
I know you've been traveling, and you said you weren't necessarily listening into the hearing on the Hill, but it's got to make you a little uncomfortable to have so much of your forecasting politicized here. I mean, John Boehner called you Nancy Pelosi's pet economist. Do you want to respond to that?
No, I wrote a piece. I put it up on my website. I didn't expect it to get this kind of attention. I probably shouldn't have been as surprised. But these are important matters for how our economy is going to perform. My work is to provide my clients with a sense of where the economy is headed and why. These are kinds of things. These are kinds of issues I have to consider and discuss.
Right.
That's what I did. As you say, I don't feel comfortable being part of the political process like this. No.
Well, I'm glad that you could join us and explain.
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mark.